and the Greater Dayton Area League of Women Voters presents Meet the Candidates, your chance to learn about the candidates running for office in the November election.
Hello, I'm Michael Lewis, a member of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Dayton area. I'm here today to talk with Richard Clay Dixon, former City Commissioner and Mayor of the City of Dayton, and Carrie Gray, Executive Assistant to the City Commission and also a 27-year employee of the City of Dayton. We're here to talk about the Dayton City Charter and the proposed amendments to the charter that are on the ballot for the November 2014 election. Dayton was incorporated over 200 years ago, and the Dayton Charter was adopted over 100 years ago. Our guest, Mr. Dixon, is the chairperson of the Charter Review Committee, who have placed issues 13, 14, 15, and 16 on the November ballot. Clay, if you could you tell us about the committee and the process for reviewing the charter?
Yes, it was a 11-member committee, and it was a cross-section of folks. We had people that from inside the City Hall, with people outside the City Hall, from both the business community as well as the community as large. So it was an excellent cross-section of people on the committee. The mayor and the commissioners gave us about 6 issues to review. And of those 6, we narrowed it down to 4 issues to go before the citizens. Now let me make it very clear, We are not trying to change the city manager form of government. We are not trying to give the city manager any additional power. When we looked at the committee, when the committee looked at the issues, and we saw that there were a lot of obsolete language in this charter, we felt that it needed to be cleaned up. And any time that you have a document that's over 100 years old, you need, a lot of things have changed in that time.
Well, let me insert here, and really you may have answered the question. Why the need to amend the charter now during this election? Well,
we haven't looked at it for a while. And it's not even about this election. Mm-hmm. It's about the need to bring about certain changes. Like I said, over a 100-year period, a lot of things have changed. And that's why one of our recommendations is that the mayor and the commission review the city charter every 10 years. So the situation that we're facing today in terms of having to clean up a lot of language will not exist.
Okay. Let's talk about each issue separately, okay, and perhaps that'll put people at ease. Let's talk about issue 13. As I understand it from reading the city charter questions, and maybe Carrie, you can address these issues. Prior to this request to amend the charter, there was a certain percentage that was required, a certain percentage of petitioners that were required to petition the City Commission to either propose an ordinance or to change an ordinance. Could you direct your response to that? What was the original number that was involved?
The original number is 25% of the registered voters, and today that's about 23,000 people. We've been lucky to have a city commission that is very open to meeting individually with members of the citizens and to hear about proposals for ordinances that a group of individuals thinks needs to be passed. But we have to have a provision for citizens who don't want to have to meet with the commission or have met with the commission unsuccessfully to be able to require them to consider a particular ordinance. Currently, that requirement is 25% of registered voters or 23,000 people. That's a very, very high standard. And when the Citizens Review Committee looked, it was far higher than what other similar communities required in order to force the commission to look at an ordinance. So we made a pretty significant reduction down to 2,500 registered voters.
Well, and I think that the ballot reads first a figure of 1,250. What's that number all about, and why is that? Is that an initial amount of signatures that are required on a petition?
Yes, it would be 1,250 people to require the City Commission to consider an ordinance. The Commission then has a set period of time to pass the ordinance as presented by those 1,250 people. If they don't pass the ordinance, or they pass it in a way that's not satisfactory to the representatives of that group, they can go out and get another 1,250 signatures to require that the item be placed on the ballot to be decided by a vote of the people. So again, the 1,250 signatures is a challenging number, but it's a number that is reflective of what other communities of our size and other communities around us require for citizens to take the fairly dramatic step of forcing the commission to consider an ordinance that they've already probably been asked to consider and decided not to consider for some reason.
And let me state that issue 13 I consider citizen friendly, because now by reducing the number of signatures that are required on a petition, it makes it easier for citizens or a citizen group to really lobby the commission and bring about some change. You know, I have collected signatures before, and when you talk about getting 500 signatures, it's very difficult at times. When you talk about 23,000 signatures, that's 25% of the registered voters, that is almost impossible. Now it's doable for citizens to lobby the commission to petition the commission to bring about change.
Well, let me play the devil's advocate for a second. You're taking the original number from 23,000 plus signatures down to 1,250 or 2,500. Aren't you opening up, by this recommendation, aren't you opening up the city to a potential of maybe crackpot people, or a group of crackpots coming in and making some type of crazy ordinance that not only takes up the commission's time, but also potentially could take up the voters' time?
When you have an open commission and the committees, you have to kind of applaud the sitting commission and commissioners for wanting to do this. It gives the citizens a real opportunity to participate in government. You know, if there's something that is wrong, if there's an ordinance that they don't like, then they can bring about change, and it's not a big roadblock in terms of that 25,000,
sure,
where you see 1,100 or so. So I'm saying it's a real transparency. I think there's real transparency between the commission and the citizens of Dayton. If you want to make a change, we're willing to really listen to you.
Well, and let me point that out to or have you pointed out that regardless of proposing the ordinance, ultimately, if that ordinance is to be ever enacted into law, it has to go to the voters first.
Right.
So we always have that protection, and this issue is somewhat streamlining that original plan or the original sections of the city charter. Would you agree, Carrie?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Let me ask another question, and once again, kind of playing devil's advocate. If an ordinance is adopted by the voters, say we go through the entire process of the 1,250 voters, then the additional 1,250 voters, and the city commission decides to put it on the ballot, and the ordinance is then passed. Under at least my reading, and I may be wrong, and I hope I am, it appears that the city commission can somehow repeal that ordinance even if it's approved by the voters. Is that a possibility under your reading of the charter?
It's a possibility because the commission does have the ability to pass ordinances, and they could theoretically pass an ordinance that would contradict and that would override an ordinance passed by a vote of the citizens.
Right.
But would be a very unusual and somewhat politically dangerous tact for a commission to take, to imagine a scenario where 1,200 citizens come together and ask them to consider an ordinance, and then they get 1,200 more people to come together and ask for a vote of the people, and then the people vote and decide to pass this ordinance. It would be pretty unlikely and pretty dangerous, politically dangerous, for 5 members to then say, well, even though we've had all these people involved and we've had a vote of the people, we're going to override it. But it is the case that mistakes sometimes happen and situations change. So an ordinance that was meaningful today maybe is not meaningful 10 or 15 years from now, which is why we have a provision here for how citizens can repeal an ordinance also through this vote of the people.
Excellent, correct. Thank you. Let's talk about, well, and we also want to note that issue 13 also establishes the Charter Review Commission or Charter Review Committee, which will at least meet every 10 years.
Yes, they would appoint a Citizens Review Committee, a Charter Review Committee every 10 years.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about issue 14, which is city appropriations, and Carrie, perhaps, and I know you, Clay, can also address this, but this seems to increase the power of the city manager. Can you explain why that's not the case?
Well, it's not really the case, because in this set of changes, what's being proposed is to respond to increased government accounting standards and to address concerns that the auditors have raised about how we have operated for a number of years. Mm-hmm. The city every year passes a budget, which is a planning tool for how we intend to spend our money, just like every family passes a budget or has a budget for how they plan on spending their personal money. But for an example of last year, where we had an extremely harsh winter, we had to move some money out of other areas in order to free up money to purchase more road salt and to pay overtime for more snowplow drivers to take care of the unexpectedly harsh winter. And just like a family may have to say, well, we thought we were going to spend this much on vacation, but now we have to spend less on vacation because we had to spend more on a medical bill. The city may have to say, we thought we were going to spend one amount of money on something, but we have to spend less on that because we have to spend more on snowplows and road salt. For the city to be able to make that change, we have to move money from one line, one expenditure line, say the line that we have for office supplies. Mm-hmm. We move it to another line, the line that we would have for purchasing road salt or for paying overtime. The only way we can do that is to request that from our budget office and have that entered into the computer system. Every one of those changes gets approved by the City Commission at some point. Currently, we approve those as a group a couple of times a year, and it's always done before the end of the year. Mm-hmm. But some new accounting standards that have been introduced make the auditors for the state that look at our books, have made those auditors and the external auditors they hire think that we may have to go to commission every time we want to move $100 from the reproduction line item to the office supply line item. For an organization the size of Dayton, that's not really feasible to do every time we need to move money. So we're creating a process that allows the city manager to summarize the changes and present those to the commission for their consideration on a more timely basis. And it really is only a matter of responding to the new accounting standards that the auditors are asking us to conform to. And so we're changing our processes in order to meet the needs and the requests of the auditors.
let me ask you, and just as an aside, to give the viewers some perspective, how large is the budget for the city of Dayton for 1 year?
The city's general fund is $156 million. So that's what pays for the basic services that people expect: police, fire, EMS, waste collection, things like that. The total budget for the city is about $350 million, and that larger number includes the operation of the water department, the operation of the Dayton International Airport, the operation of the South Airport, which is part of our aviation system, and capital projects like street paving, water pipe replacements, sewer pipe enhancements, and things like that.
Would it be fair to say that in addition, and we'll talk about issue 15 here in a minute, but it seems to me that this process is codifying in the charter an easier method to do business, one, and two, not having to come back to the city commission with every, say for example, $100 bill or a $50 bill. Would that be a fair statement?
That's correct.
Okay.
And let me add that our appropriation process is an award-winning process that we go through every year to set our budget. But all this does is that when there are certain emergencies, it allows us, as been mentioned, to kind of transfer monies from one line item to another to meet those emergencies. And we're not doing away with our award-winning appropriation process that we go through every year.
Sure. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about issue 15. And it talks about abolishing city departments. Clay, can you give us an idea of what the commission was thinking about when it went through? There are several sections of the city charter that are asking to be that you're asking to have repealed. Can you go through that?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Well, when we looked at the charter on this issue, issue 15, it states that the city has 5 departments, and it specifically names those departments. Mm-hmm. Well, the city does not have those 5 departments. So all we're doing is eliminating and giving the city, the commission, the power to set the departments that exist or they need to exist. And I need Kerry to kind of help me out on that one.
I think he summarized it really, really well. 100 years ago, when the charter was written, the people who were writing the charter set out 5 departments for services that the city needed to provide at that time. Mm-hmm. But they also recognized that times were going to change, so they made a general statement that said the city commission can create or delete departments as they need to and as situations change. Over those 100 years, some of these departments have changed. For example, originally we had a Department of Public Safety that encompassed police, fire, and EMS. Right. Well, police and fire. EMS didn't even exist 100 years ago.
Sure.
Now we have 2 separate departments, one for police, one for fire. There also was a call for a Department of Welfare because the city provided welfare services at that time. Now the county provides those welfare services. So really what happened is, in this area, the charter got too detailed and tried to anticipate what departments we were going to need for the operation of the city over the next 100 or 200 years. Mm-hmm. We're taking out that detail because of the 5 departments that the original charter called for, 3 of them either don't exist or exist in significantly different ways. So we're taking out some of that detail and keeping the requirement that the city commission creates departments or abolishes departments as they see fit. That's part of the policy setting responsibility that the commission has.
Will that ability, that power existed before this request?
Yes.
The power of the commission to do that. That is not to say that there's going to be any change to either classified or unclassified employment or the Civil Service Board or anything like that.
Yeah, let me make it clear. In my opening remarks, I stated that we are not trying to make changes, administrative changes, in city government. We're not trying to give the city manager any additional powers or take powers from existing departments such as the Civil Service Board. So we're not doing that.
Okay. Now, also in issue 15, there are several income tax provisions from years ago that appeared to be temporary income tax provisions that are now being repealed. I say that only because some people will look at a ballot and they'll say income tax and they'll immediately not vote for something because it says income tax on it. These are income taxes that were enacted in the past by the charter, and have now they've gone by the wayside. Is that a correct statement, Carrie?
That's exactly correct. Issue 15 is all about cleaning up and streamlining the charter. If you imagine a family living in a house for 100 years, there's going to be all kinds of things tucked away in the corners and up in the attic that people don't use anymore. Grandma's broken iron may be there, and Uncle Bob's Christmas tree stand is down in the basement, but nobody really worries about it. But then if you're getting ready to move forward, you're going to throw those things away. And that's what we're doing in issue 15. We've got 24 sections of the charter that are no longer relevant to the operation of the city today, and so we're wanting to sweep those out so that the charter will be smaller and more easily understood. There are a bunch of them that are exactly what you described, that was for the earnings tax for small periods of time. Because for many years we had temporary earnings taxes and would go back and ask the voters to renew them from time to time. 4 years, 6 years, 8 years sometimes, it varied. Now, earlier this spring, the voters decided to make our earnings tax a permanent 2.25%. So these sections that relate to what the temporary earnings tax was in 1960 or 1975, they're no longer relevant. So we're sweeping those out in order to make the charter more efficient. There's also some provisions that related to the very first days of the new charter. For example, to clarify that the mayor in 1913 would remain the mayor in 1914 even though a charter had come into effect. We've had a lot of elections since 1914 and that mayor's no longer mayor. So we can take those old provisions out. And then there's two provisions that were put in the charter and the courts have ruled unconstitutional. And so we're also taking those charters out. They haven't been enforced ever since the courts said that they were unconstitutional, but they've always been there kind of littering up the charter. So now we're pulling those out in order to make sure that the charter moving forward are the relevant sections related to the operations of the city in 2015 and beyond, not in 1915 and backwards.
Great, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about issue 16. And it seems to me from a reading of the ballot that this is kind of a defining or a delineation of the powers of the city manager. Would that be a fair statement, Clay?
That'd be very fair. We stand a chance of losing money from the state and even from the federal departments, simply because the role of the city commission or who's in charge is not clearly defined in the charter. So by making the city manager the chief executive officer of the city, just like other cities, charter cities throughout the country, will give us the opportunity not to be eligible for different grants.
Absolutely.
Would that be a fair statement, Karen?
Yes.
Is there anything in issue 16 which somehow changes the powers of the city manager, makes him more powerful, and makes the commission less powerful?
The city manager is not doing anything now that he would have the power to do if this is changed. he has the power to operate the city. He is the chief operating officer, but it doesn't say that in the city charter as it is written today. So we're cleaning up the language so it's real clear that he is the chief operating officer. It doesn't give him any more power that he does not have existing today.
Or takes away any power
away.
from the commission itself.
Right.
Thank you. I don't believe I have any further questions. Gentlemen, is there anything else that you'd like to point out about issues 13, 14, 15, or 16 for the voters that they should know?
I think the most important thing is to know that for issues 13, 14, and 16, the Montgomery County Board of Elections has put the entire wording on the ballot. So people will see for 13, 14, and 16, they'll see exactly what the language is in their voting booth when they vote. For issue 15, which is repealing 24 sections, because that was so long, they just summarized the affected areas on the ballot, but the entire language is going to be posted at the polling location. So everyone will have the opportunity to see exactly what they're voting on before they cast their vote. There's also a summary of information on the City of Dayton's website, which is daytonohio.gov, and they can look, it's labeled charter information, and they can get that and they can read it and study it ahead of time.
Thank you both so much for being with us today to help the voters understand these issues. We encourage everyone to vote. The League Voters Guide in English and Spanish are currently available in libraries throughout Montgomery and Greene County. If you have any questions, please call the League at 228-4041, or if you need a copy of the Voters Guide. It's also being distributed at some supermarkets around town. Once again, if you want a copy, please give us a call at that number at 228-4041 and we'll get you a copy. There are many different ways to vote in this election. If you received an absentee ballot application from the Secretary of State and are planning to vote absentee, which means vote from your home, here are some tips. Fill in your absentee ballot application carefully and send in your application as soon as possible. It must be in the hands of your Board of Elections by the end of business on Election Day. If you're planning on voting by mail or absentee, be sure to fill in your absentee ballot correctly. Do not check marks or put X's on your ballot. Fill in the ovals in blue or black ink. Put proper postage on your ballot and mail it as soon as possible. Don't wait till the last minute. You can also vote early at your Board of Elections. Early voting begins at 8 a.m. in the morning and runs until 5 p.m. We'd like to remind everyone that the polls are open at 6:30 a.m. on Election Day, Tuesday, November 4th. We hope to see you all there. Be sure to vote to voice your opinion and to make our democracy work. Failing to vote is not rebellion, it's surrender. Thank you.